Go.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a meeting of the Providence School Board Policy Committee. I hereby call this meeting to order at 5:34 p.m. on Wednesday, August 7th. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as drafted? Second? So moved. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes only one item this evening, approval of minutes from the April 3rd and May 1st meetings of the Policy Committee?
Motion.
I second that motion. The motion passes. So we will get right into our business items this evening.
Chairwoman.
Yes.
Just to know technicalities, Robert's rules, we'd have to have
all
those.
Okay,
votes.
so let's backtrack and get that correct then. Okay, so I called the meeting to order. We're gonna backtrack a bit. You made a motion, Vice President Escobar, to approve the agenda. I seconded that motion. All in favor? Aye. The motion passes. You also made a motion on our consent agenda to approve the minutes of the April 3rd and May 1st Policy Committee meetings. All those in favor? Aye. That motion passes as well. That now brings us to agenda item 4.0, policy and planning. And our first item tonight, 4.1, is the reflection and prayer accommodation policy. And I'd like to welcome Mr. James Scott from the district to talk to us about this policy.
Hi, thank you, Chairwoman. So I'm pinch hitting for Dr. Onier tonight. She had a conflict. This policy has already passed policy committee back in April. And it went to school board in June. I'm sorry, policy committee in May, went to school board it was supposed to be on the June agenda. Solicitor Ruggiero wanted to review it to make sure it's compliant with the establishment clause. So we pulled it from the agenda. Him and Dr. Onier met a few times on it. It was trimmed down a little, and the title was changed to Reflection and Prayer Accommodation Policy. So the original policy, prayer policy, wasn't necessarily accurate. So this is a more accurate title to what the intent of the policy is. The definition section was trimmed a little bit. I believe that's where the change was. And both Dr. Onier and Solicitor Ruggiero are happy with the policy where it is. So I think that's where we are. We're hoping to get it passed on to the school board for first read in August and second read in September, and it's compliant with all the federal regulations on in-school prayer.
Sounds good. Yeah, I don't have anything.
Yes, I would just add that I think that the difference again is both the title of the policy, to expand that to include reflection and prayer accommodation. There had been discussion at a previous policy committee, kind of, what is the content, how deep or broad do we want to go within the policy itself? And I just want to note, and I was glad to see on page 2 under implementation strategies that the superintendent and/or the Office of Equity and Belonging will develop administrative regulations around this policy once it's passed. And just a reminder, that's how most of our policies work. And that'll give an opportunity to spell out more of those things. And it looks like there would be specific, also in section, the training, oversight, and communication section, I think, is also really important, and that lays out how this gets communicated to the school communities, as well as developing sort of specific implementation that best suits each of our individual schools, as each school community will have specific needs around this policy. So I, having been part of that previous discussion and agreeing to the previous hold, I would feel comfortable recommending this for a first read at our next school board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, Vice President Escobar has made a motion to move the reflection and prayer accommodation policy to first read at the August school board meeting. I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. We will see this policy at our next full school board meeting for first read. The next item on our agenda is item 4.2, the school closing policy. This policy had been already approved on first read, I believe, at our April school board meeting.
That's correct. It was actually scheduled for a second read and was referred back to policy committee. So I think you wanted to give, you addressed it in your committee report, that's why you sent it back. I'll let you speak for yourself, Chairwoman.
Sure. So this policy was on the agenda for the May school board meeting for a second read and adoption. We received some additional public comment at that time, at that meeting. And at that time, we chose to refer this policy back to policy committee in case others would like to provide additional public comment to make sure that we're getting this policy right. And since that time, when we last referred it back to committee, we've also had an opportunity that I'm going to turn back to Mr. Scott on for the district internally to look at this policy. And I think it's my understanding, and I believe it's the goal of this committee, that we are only implementing policies that are both going to serve the community well, but that are realistic and reasonable for the district to be able to execute and implement. So if you could talk more about any developments since we last discussed it back in early May, I believe. That would be great.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of internal touch points on this policy. And at this point, we reviewed with the superintendent, the deputy superintendent, chief of operations. Rides had a chance to look at it. We're comfortable with it across the board. And it's easily actionable. It sets clear guidelines. We feel that we can, where this event's come up again, we could create action steps and work off it efficiently and quickly. And it sets a bare minimum compliance where we have no objections to it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I will add one more piece of information, and then I will ask my fellow committee members, other board members, and then finally other members of the public if they have additional comments on this. First, I will add that some of the feedback that we received from the public was just being mindful and careful about what the engagement process looks like and how much transparency and at what stage we can provide to the community. I think there is, and when we say community, we mean both the individual school community, so the families and staff within that community, as well as Providence as a whole. So I would like to just turn it over and see Vice President Escobar, do you have any additional comments about the policy as written right now?
If there were recommendations on specific languages, I think there's been enough time given to submit that either via email or anything on policy. I look at the community meetings aspect. It provides a public forum, provides a meeting with, if there is a student, school parent teacher association, school staff. It's also to prevent sort of like a surprise to the school closing type of aspect. So I feel comfortable with this being the first step, given that if there are concerns, there hasn't been language submitted, and for that to react to. And I don't necessarily have any suggestions to add on to this current policy as is. Has there been any fellow colleagues or anything like that, added any additional language or concerns and stuff like that? I think I wasn't there for that meeting.
I think you were not.
Yeah.
We missed you.
Yeah.
I think the comment, I think that it gets complicated to think about how do we arrive at a recommendation to know what we're trying to talk about and inform folks versus when are we engaging those communities. I think that was sort of the push and pull, but we did not receive any specific language recommendations from anyone. I know that we've been joined by another school board member, and I'd like to welcome school board member Tyrell Stevens and ask, do you have any feedback or comments you'd like to share on this policy?
I thought it was totally fine. I know Jen Wood was someone that commented on it, but that meeting was, I forgot. It was in
It's
June.
been a
so-
long spring and summer. Yes.
I guess I would say this. I think we pass it, send an email to Jen, because I think she was the only person that expressed concern. Like, hey, do you have any like actual like language changes? Because then we could just have it on board and, provide. I don't know if it'd be extensive, or unless she does have extensive. But I also don't feel that we need to. Well, no, I don't see it because Jen is a significant community stakeholder. I would say like that's where I would go, but in terms of approving it tonight, I'd much rather approve it tonight if there hasn't been any language sent over, there hasn't been any, any of our colleagues putting any recommendations forward. And as reading this policy, it's giving sort of a 30-day sort of like clearance between potential decision to community feedback to bringing it back to the school board, which I believe has been one of the biggest conflicts in terms of like the school board being told, this is happening and no decision-making aspect of it. Given that we're under the takeover, however, right, like Ryan PPSD can maneuver how to not maneuver what's given, but this is also more in the eye of hoping that we can at least have like the community forum, the community piece, and enough of a communication to the school board, one, and I think two, this could be a solid guideline for when takeover is complete, and I think whoever's on that board could also look at this and make amendable changes. So as we know, policy is like fluid and it can be built upon. But I would say let's move forward on it because we don't have any written recommendations or concerns to change our policy. We could connect with Jen if there's any anything that's like not so significant for us to meet again. Then we just move forward. Does that sound good?
I would tend to agree with that. I would refer back to Mr. Scott's comments that this is sort of the baseline that we want to try to work from and see if, again, I said earlier, not because we wanted to make things easy for our colleagues in this building at the district, but because we want to make sure that we're making realistic policy that we can agree on and move the work forward together. I would like to get this back to the full board and get this policy on the books for the same reason, that I think it's better that we have something in place. And sometimes with policy, we don't know until we start to implement it. Sometimes it's difficult to anticipate, roadblocks or difficulty until you're implementing it. And then that's when we might need to revisit or develop more clear regulations around it. And I would also echo your sentiment, Vice President Escobar, about this really positions the school board to serve in a way that we have been serving as of late during the intervention, that we are a place where the public can come and share their concerns, that we can hear more and ask more questions of people making the decisions currently. And this builds that into that policy. So I think that gives us a little more standing to keep doing that, like as there may be closures, mergers, and other such changes to our school portfolio over time. So I know that we have a few other members of the public here. Just wondering if anyone else would like to make any comments about this policy. Please state your name and role for the record.
Aubrey Johnson, co-chair of the Parent Advisory Council. Good evening. Just something really quick. Under notification and communication, when they're making the recommendations, it's to initiate a school building's closure or phase out. I just want to point out that merger's not included there. I know it's something small, but sometimes those technicalities can make a big difference.
So add the word merger in that first under point A, initial notification.
Right.
I think that's a reasonable, since we're talking about merger earlier, I think that could be reasonable language. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it changes much like that.
I think that works for us too. Thank you, Aubrey.
Thank you for catching that. Any other comments or concerns before the committee takes a vote on moving this policy? There being none, I will entertain a motion to move the school closing policy back to the school board for second read and potential adoption.
Motion.
I second that. All in favor? Aye. So moved. So we will see this policy at our August school board meeting later this month. The next item on the agenda is item 4.3, use of students in district media policy. Mr. Scott, you're up again. You're very
So-
busy this evening.
So, pinching for a lot of people. So, this comes out of a conversation we've had previously, Chairwoman, and also with the previous chair, Robert Santana, that we need to review our policies more frequently. And we have some things that have been on the books for decades at some level, and we haven't reviewed them. So this year, we're gonna make a good faith effort to review in a quality way as many policies we can. This one was last authorized in '22, so I did have the comms department and the solicitor review it, and there's no changes needed to the current practice, so we're just asking for reauthorization. And then we'll check in 3 years.
And has anyone expressed any concern around this policy? But since the time it was last implemented or written, have you heard it? And a second question, what departments or folks would have been involved here at looking at this policy to make sure it matches?
This would have been our school department lawyer, Mr. Ruggiero. It would have been our communications team and the superintendent. And this did not come up as a need, but I decided this year our focus is going to be renewing and revamping all our external facing policies, which include the volunteer policy, which we expect to bring to you next month, and a couple other policies. So I'm going, this is just an easy one, it's low hanging fruit. And next month we're going to come back with volunteer policy, which might need some bigger changes, and a couple other items. You also have wellness policy coming, which at some level is external facing because it's wraparound services. So no changes here, no complaints, just looking for a reauthorization.
Excellent. Vice President Escobar, any questions or comments?
No.
Other members? Ms. Johnson? Never a surprise, always a pleasure. Please let us know what you're thinking on this.
Just a couple of things. So one of the things is a suggestion on the permission slip, the generic district permission slip. There's no space for pictures, permission for pictures. I know in the beginning of the year, paper sent out to all families in the pile of paperwork that they get. I'd like to point out that does not always make it back to the schools. Also, those aren't always looked back on when we have things like field trips, et cetera. I've had a time where I chaperoned a field trip. They were asked for pictures. I had to call the school. They had to try to see every student, find out if they had permissions or not, and it just turned into the students not getting pictures taken. So something as simple as having permission on the generic permission slip, right? Or the template. That way that's said and done, and teachers or chaperones have that on their person. There's no questions, there's no confusions, there's no problems. And then also I had a question. In terms of media, I know some permission slips, the district will send out something so they can have pictures and media and stuff for district stuff. Is there ever a time where that's a requirement or the student wouldn't be able to participate?
Well, I mean, if Mayor Smiley's coming to cut a ribbon on, a new school, and a kid doesn't have a photo release, they wouldn't be in the, standing behind the mayor with the rest of the class for pictures.
Would they ever be prohibited from going somewhere like a field trip?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think, if a kid doesn't have a photo release, you just don't put their photos out publicly.
Right.
That's what the policy deals with, but I was a building administrator, I never came across that particular problem relative to a field trip.
Okay.
It sounds like we might have some concerns not necessarily to the policy itself, but how this policy gets implemented with fidelity across all of our schools, and making sure that this is a good reminder then, if we're renewing this policy, to think about the way that that gets communicated to schools. And, you know, even further, not just building leaders, but making sure that there's clarity when folks are going on field trips or having special events, that all the staff are clear on how to implement that, so that certainly students aren't excluded from an activity or there isn't confusion around that. You can always use a refresher on, sometimes policy is policy and the actual implementation is different. So thank you for raising that concern. I think I have heard that from families before sometimes, that there's a little fuzziness on that. And as a parent of students in PPSD, I can say that sometimes I get different forms, like forms specific to a field trip, the main forms we do in the beginning of the year. So I would flag to say maybe just reviewing what are the materials that are sent out to families at the start of the year, since we're about to be coming upon that moment soon, and making sure that that's reflected well here and has clarity.
That's fine, I think the field trip is now that's a good idea with the photo on the field trip, that's it's kind of a separate issue in a lot of ways. I can follow up on that with you. And I can certainly get you a copy of like any media release forms or anything we need, give it to you ahead of this first read.
Yeah,
If you're comfortable with that.
sure. More info, more is more. I like more, so that's fine. And Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, James, can you walk me through it? So say Miss Smiley is, going to a ribbon cutting, he's gonna cut the ribbon, and we have a bunch of students that, are there. How would we go about making sure that all of those students have the
It's generally kept from Skyward, so it'd be something in Skyward with like a Y or an N next to the full release. So I get a screenshot of that too, so you can see it.
No, I don't want to see. I was saying, so say like they're having a ribbon cutting, would there be like a select few of students that would be invited to that ribbon cutting because of the picture taking?
Sometimes you have students in a photo, but you have to check to make sure you have the appropriate permissions from the parents to include them in that.
Oh, okay. So you will go through that process after like the picture's taken?
Yes, like when I was at a school, if we were doing a press conference, there's gonna be students involved in it. Laura Hart was the comms director at the time, to make sure at the school and that we check, okay, this class is gonna be photographed, make sure they have full releases. Sometimes you put like, a certain sticker, give something to the kids, so you know they're good. Like, okay, but you don't exclude the other kids, they're just not in the photos. Like, all right, you guys go to the playground, you guys stay over here with the, with the mayor, and sit behind the mayor and clap. And so we just make sure we protect privacy, in a reasonable way.
And with the acknowledgement that could be complicated, right? Because in any given classroom or school, you're gonna have students who do have the release signed and those who don't. So it is a moving target. So I think it should in theory be both. Like it should be that you're checking ahead of time so that the adults in the room have a sense of who should or should not be in photos, and then also cross-checking afterwards to make sure that nothing is posted or shared in any way, with including a student. Because I think part of what we're getting at here together is to say we don't want students to feel excluded or be excluded from any kind of activity, but we also want to keep their privacy and their parents' wishes in mind to make sure that we're not violating that. So, thank you.
I think that information needs to be shared not just within schools but district-wide. I think people in the district need to be aware of that as well. There needs to be clarification across the board.
Yeah, all that stuff's in the parent handbook and sent home at the beginning of the year, so.
I'm just like, when new people come in or anything, I think just need clarification needs to be made.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion, unless there are other comments, I will entertain a motion to move the public use of students in public information materials or the media policy out of policy committee for first read at the next school board meeting. Do I have a motion? I second that. All in favor? Aye. Excellent. So this policy as well will be on the agenda for our next school board meeting in August. The next item on our agenda, item 4.4, is an information-only item, and that is a PPSD curriculum update. I see that we have a few guests here this evening, so please introduce yourselves when you're ready to speak, share your name and title, and give us the good updates.
All right, I am Dr. Michaela Keegan. I am the Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I have been in the role since December. Previously, I was an administrator in Providence Schools. I have with me Donna Casanova. She is our Director of Science and STEM, and she can introduce herself before she gives her presentation. We just wanted to provide a real high level update on curriculum for the school year. And so I thought it'd be helpful to, and you are probably already aware of this, but I thought it'd be helpful to frame this as the process that we undergo for when we do adopt curriculum or select curriculum. So the process for selecting curriculum in Rhode Island is dictated by Rhode Island law. So the specific law is Rhode Island General Law 16, .22.30-33. That was passed in 2019, and it addressed math, ELA, and science. So it outlined a process by which RIDE and the commissioner had to make available how to adopt a process of highly qualified instructional materials and curriculum. It also outlined, this general Rhode Island law outlines the dates by which this needs to take place. So for math and ELA, it was by June 2023, science by June 2025, but LEAs were encouraged to adopt earlier than that. So that was the deadline to be in place by the September of that following school year. So that's the overall process as set by Rhode Island General Law. PPSD has adopted high quality curriculum for math, ELA, and science K-8 and high school biology. Chemistry and physics will follow by summer 2025 in accordance with the timeline that was set out in the law. Any questions on that so far? Okay, so I wanted to also provide you with the names of the curriculum that we use for ELA, math, and science. So for ELA, and we use lots of curriculum materials, but this is our core, so the core curriculum we use in our classrooms with our students. So for ELA, we use ARC, American Reading Company, for core for elementary and for middle school. We also use magnetic reading by Curriculum Associates for K2. That's our fundamental program in addition to ARC core. Then we use for high school Study Sync by McGraw-Hill. And then we use My Perspective by Savas with some of our newcomer populations, and that is a high quality reading curriculum. For math, we use Eureka Squared by Great Minds. That's used in elementary school. And then we use Illustrative Math. We use the Kendall Hunt version of Illustrative Math in middle school and high school. And we also will use Envision AGA by Savas. And then for science, we use Amplify for grades K through 8. We use Discovery for anything, so for chemistry and physics grades, typically grade 10, 11. And then we're adopting, the only new core curriculum that we're adopting for this school year is called Open SciEd. And we're piloting it or using it with 9th grade, with biology, I should say, which is typically taught in 9th grade. So high school biology, we are adopting Open SciEd in anticipation of adopting Open SciEd for chemistry and physics to be rolled out in the following school year.
Does that mean, sorry to interrupt you, does that mean that Open SciEd would be replacing the Discovery curriculum that's
For
currently
biology.
used
Yep.
for chemistry and physics
Yes.
now? So this year, chemistry and physics still Discovery.
Yes.
But next year, like school year 26, it would be Open SciEd for all of those school science curriculum.
Yes, and Open SciEd is green rated and is high quality.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that means? What does high quality curriculum mean? What does green rated mean? Without getting too far into the weeds, but I think like folks throw those terms around about like what a high quality curriculum is. So if you could talk a little bit about that, it sounds like
Yeah, go ahead, Donna.
And Donna Casanova, Director of Science and STEM. It's nice to be here, thank you. Ed Reports is a service that vets curriculums. In science, it's whether they're three-dimensional, meaning they are aligned to the three-dimensional instructional strategies of NGSS, which are the science and engineering practices around the content to call out the cross-cutting concepts. All right? So that's one. They have to be aligned and cover all the standards, right? And that they have to be user-friendly. So it's vetted that way, and if you are green, then you're approved to high-quality curriculum.
And Ed Reports, is that service, is that part of the Rhode Island general law that's dictating this, or does that state law not necessarily say which service you would follow to know what is a high quality curriculum?
It doesn't dictate it, but it's what's used nationally to determine.
So that's a
rate.
national standard, that's
yeah,
like
national
best
standard.
practice, okay.
Yep.
That's helpful.
And there is a waiver process that LEAs can pursue if they're wanting to adopt a curriculum that is not green rated. Green rated just means it was rated, it meets all of the criteria that Donna just outlined. If it doesn't meet all of the criteria, it wouldn't be green rated. We must, in Rhode Island, select green rated curriculum. And so if it's not, or if there's a material that an LEA would wish to use, I don't know where this may be occurring, but in Providence, we're not doing this. You have this, you can submit a waiver. I'm not sure what the process is, but that is stated in the law, just to be transparent. So there is a process. I'm not aware of a district that has gone through that process, but it is stated.
Thank you. I think that's helpful context to understand sort of how you're operating and choosing those. Like you're bound by the state law, and that state law and the sort of nationally accepted practice is to follow this service.
And just one more note, and this is all public information. So if you go on the Rhode Island Department Ed website, they do provide a list of highly qualified or curriculum that meets the criteria for ELA, for math, and then for early childhood. They have not, I haven't found an updated list for science yet, but again, that was, in science is still not, it's anticipated for June 2025, so we're still ahead of that timeline. I may just not have found it, but we still went forward and selected a green rated curriculum that is, that's been vetted.
Sorry, I've gone way off on a tangent for you all. Thank you. Sorry about that.
These are important questions. Sometimes we're so in the work that we speak in these terms that we want to make sure that that folks understand the process. And it was a new process in 2019 when the law was passed. But we had to really ensure that our selection process met and satisfied the people.
And as Ed Reports began, they immediately started with ELA. So there was a lot of vetting going on there. And then they went to math, and now they're getting to science. So Amplify was actually the first curriculum green rated on Ed Reports. So we are ahead of the curve. And then Open Science is green rated.
Is there anything else you want to share with us before we open it up to more questions?
Because we're adopting, because the only new core curriculum that we're adopting this year is in science, we thought it'd be helpful to provide a little bit of additional information around science and how it might be responsive to kind of current issues that people care about. And so one that we wanted to highlight was climate change. And so Donna has prepared just an overview as to how our curriculum, regardless of the curriculum, so we have Amplified, Open Science, and Discoveries, how all three of them address the topic of climate change.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so I'll begin with Amplified. And in K, the next gen science standards are heavily the scholars use the science and engineering practices around content to call out cost-cutting concepts, which is cause and effect, matter and energy, system models, structure and function, right? So in K, they begin observing permeable and non-permeable surfaces, speaking about why it floods in the city. This is in grade K. It hits on rain gardens and possible solutions for flooding. In second grade, human impact on the Chalta tree. They're collecting and analyzing data to develop a solution because of human impact. Grade 3, analyzing patterns in weather and data. Weather patterns and climate scenario. What island would best fit the orangutan? So they're given, it's phenomena-based curriculum. So each lesson, it starts with an overarching question and a phenomena situation. Like what is happening? How can we fix it? So grade 4, human impact. Increase in UV light affecting organisms and ecosystems. Climate, they're studying fossil records and identifying past climates. Earth, grade 5, Earth systems and scenarios of water shortages, developing possible solutions. Deforestation, reforestation, organisms in decline, rise in temperature. Grade 6, ocean, atmosphere and climate weather patterns, Earth's changing climate and engineering. Grade 7, geology on Mars, the past climates there, right? Rock formation, chemical interactions, greenhouse gases. Grade 8, ultraviolet radiation, atmospheric data analysis. Grade 9, now this would be the biology, open SciAd, all right? How do we protect ecosystems? What causes fire in an ecosystem and what are some possible solutions? That brings about droughts, gets into that. Urbanization, affecting populations and way to minimize that effect. Rain gardens again. And then discovery, which is chemistry and physics. What is climate change? How to measure changing climate change impacts, climate change factors. What will happen to the Arctic bear population as the environment changes? Collecting and interpreting data to develop an informational writing piece, comparing and contrast cause and effect, system and system models, energy and matter, ocean acidification and coral bleaching.
Is this something that we could put in a document and like share with our board members? I think there are a few board members that are interested in terms of how climate change is being either implemented or talked about in the curriculum for our students.
Yeah, we can do that. We could, in the most helpful way, which is what Donna just shared. Is that the information you're looking for?
Yeah, I think just sort of like maybe a little memo or whatever, just being like, your school board members were implementing lessons around climate change and sort of a strategy and rollout, because there are a few board members, one in particular has asked about implementing climate change education into our curriculum, so I think they'll be happy about it, and I think just overall knowledge for the
Yeah,
rest of our board.
yeah, would it be helpful to also have like the process, kind of a overview of what I presented?
Yes,
Okay.
everything.
James, we can share that with you if you'd like, maybe by early next week, would that be okay? Because maybe by Monday or-
That's fine, we're
maybe
still in
Wednesday.
that's fine, we're still in the slow part of summer.
I think ideally, if you're able to share something before our board meeting, which is in 2 weeks, that's helpful because I will give an update at that meeting about what we're talking about tonight, like our policy committee update. And then I can refer folks back to seek out that memo and to certainly, and if you'd be comfortable to remind them that if they have additional questions, that they could email you or both of you together and request, more information. I have to say that, as a parent with kids in these schools, this is exciting, and I didn't necessarily know this because maybe that's on me. But I'm not always looking at every single assignment that my kids are doing right now. And they're teenagers, so they don't always tell me what they're doing in school all the time. So this is exciting, and yes, to echo Vice President Escobar, I think we've had, I think all of us on the school board have different issues that we're particularly passionate about, but I think as a collective, we definitely want to make sure that our kids are learning everything they need to know across all of our science disciplines, but particularly this generation of students is committed to protecting our planet and learning about the impacts, the history, and like what they can do moving forward. So this is exciting stuff. Does anyone else have questions around the science curriculum or implementation of high quality curriculum in general? Ms. Johnson.
I just have a question. When you implement curriculum, or once it's been implemented, is there a time where you speak to the teachers or the students to get input or feedback on it, or tweak it?
Yeah, so that happens in a few ways. Usually, especially in a rollout year, we'll work with the curriculum vendor and usually it's part of their process too, because we ensure that with them, we are monitoring the implementation and also looking at feedback. So there's usually a survey that students may take, maybe not students, every single student, but a sample of them. We survey the teachers as well, and so they share that information with us as part of our mid-year review and end-of-year review at a minimum, or anytime we request it. So if we need any information from our curriculum vendors, we ask that, and they're always very responsive. And then we are also, that's something that's on our radar, is engaging students, families, and teachers, like all stakeholders, in like how's the curriculum going? Because we've got some curriculum that we rolled out 3 years ago, 4 years ago, especially in ELA. Amplify was over the past 2 years, and then OpenSci the first year is this year. So yes, it's important to make sure that we hear from students, from families, from teachers, from school leaders on how it's going. How does it feel? What are you learning? And we look at the data too. So we look at achievement data to see, hey, students seem to be doing really well. What's new this year? Oh, we have a new math curriculum. Let's explore that further.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, can you talk a little bit about what the process looks like of rolling out a new curriculum and how you support each school and the teachers within that school and that department, both like sort of at the initial rollout and maybe like ongoing support? Because I imagine that it's difficult to take on a new curriculum, and I know, Ms. Casanovas, you were in the classroom for a really long time and probably saw lots of different types of curriculum. I'd love to hear from both of you, but you in particular, if you could talk about what that process looks like for us.
The vetting of the vendor, and then the procurement of the vendor, and then lining up professional development for our teachers. So I know I can speak to next week, there's 2 full days for biology teachers to be introduced and begin to manipulate the OpenSci platform. And there will be 2 professional days at the beginning of the year to complete the face-to-face part. But this vendor, has indicated that, and I would like to have monthly gatherings after school virtually with feedback and questions moving forward to go deeper into the platform in its understanding.
And something that we do across the board is when we identify the curriculum, go through a vetting process, and then it's selected, the first thing we need to do is we need to outfit, right, the classrooms. So we need to, purchase everything. Whether it's kits, it's books, textbooks, it looks different depending on the subject. And so for year 1, it's a lot of materials. And after year 1, what we're careful to do is to really take a good inventory of what do we need? So what do we have enough of, and what do we need to kind of restock on? So that's the material side of things. When it comes to Donna mentioned professional development, professional learning, training for teachers, that's really important. So usually when we select a new curriculum, we front-load that with a lot of training for teachers. And that might look like in-person professional development full days. It may look like regular revisiting of it throughout the year. And so you want to make sure that our teachers are fully prepared to teach it. A lot of times too, we'll work with the curriculum vendor to come in and we'll coach teachers too. So, they're the experts on their product, and we are, teaching and learning with Providence and, our instructional model and our priorities. So together we will, with us leading it, we'll go in and we might do classroom meetings, walk through, observe teachers. Sometimes we'll coach with the principal at a school. They've asked us to, use some coaching time with the vendor to come in and actually coach teachers on implementing it well. So a lot of training for teachers so they feel comfortable and prepared.
Another question that we tend to hear from folks is wondering about, where are teachers or the teachers union involved in the selection process with a new curriculum as well as this implementation piece? Can you talk about at what touch points teachers, on the ground teacher folks might be involved or not?
That's a good question. I can't in Providence because I haven't been here at any point where a new curriculum was identified for open sci-ed, for biology. Technically this is a pilot, so we're starting with bio and set it all 3 years so that we could get feedback from teachers, since we still are within the time frame of, we don't have to have it implemented this year, it's the following school year. So actually this is kind of part of the process, is using open sci-ed and getting feedback and input from teachers throughout the year. The other thing is that it really is one of the only green-rated curriculum for high school for science. So we didn't just pick one from a long list. This is kind of the only one that's there.
No, they're
Very good, yeah. So it's a little bit unique. We will be coming up on, and this year we've been meeting with the superintendent's teachers cabinet over the course since I started. I mean, those meetings have predated me, but since I started and since Dr. Dillon started and Carol was chief academic officer, every single teachers cabinet meeting has we've engaged in conversations and discussion around curriculum. So teaching and learning has been a focus of the teachers cabinet meetings with the superintendent since December. It's been really productive, and that's where we do work through a lot of this. When it is time to look for a new curriculum, what will the process be? And there does need to be a process that engages stakeholders like teachers, the teachers union, in selecting that. But as far as what will the process be specifically, I don't know, and I wasn't here. Yeah, but there will be a process. It's really important to get feedback from the people who teach it, and also and then buy-in, right? If they're part of the selection process and had voice in that, then when we do roll it out, A, people are familiar with it, and B, we're part of this. So it's not being done to them, it's being done with our teachers. It's important.
Absolutely. And when you say that this is a pilot, just for clarity, it's going to be all biology across the district is piloting this.
Yes.
And it's a pilot in the sense of you're only piloting it with biology this year, and then the other science, physics, and chemistry for the following year. With that's the goal, is to roll it that way. Okay.
Yeah, for example, if for some reason this year, which I don't anticipate because this open sci-ed is already being used by several other districts in the state and for over the past few years, and other states, nearby states. So there's been a lot of teacher engagement with open sci-ed. So it's very well received. But if for some reason this year we had a lot of negative feedback, we would pause and say, okay, we have to have high quality curriculum in place for the following school year for science. Let's get our teachers together, whether from the committee of teachers together, and explore what other options there are so that we make a more informed decision. And also, what is it that they don't like? Is did they not get enough training? So they don't know how to roll it out. But yeah, it's a pilot in that we're only doing it with biology in anticipation of using open sci-ed for chemistry and physics the following year, unless there was something drastic that happened and wasn't anticipated. But that's why we piloted it this year, which is one subject.
Thanks for addressing that. Other questions or comments, concerns, Mr. Scott?
I just gave you attention.
Thank you. If we do not have other questions or concerns at this time, we look forward to seeing that follow-up memo, and certainly you are welcome back anytime you're going to be here. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to our final agenda item tonight, a legislative update from Mr. Scott. That's item 4.5. Again, this is also an informational only update.
And this is, thank you, Chair Hughes, for inviting me to do this. This might be something we'll implement as part of the case, just to track things that are going on. I'm just gonna give a very high-level summary of things that we should be thinking about that happened at state and local government this year. Number one, at the State House, declining enrollment is a statewide issue. It's not a Providence thing. Other districts dealing with it. There's a number of factors behind that. The housing crisis is one. Every town has things that grow, like we have Brown University and PC, and when they expand, that takes up housing stock. That work has the airport. Every place has its challenges. Coastal places, the Airbnbs are buying up a lot of stuff, creating less family houses. But that decline enrollment is a factor everywhere. Another big thing, another big change, and your Providence delegation in the House fought really hard for this. The original state budget changed the funding formula and benchmarked against the consumer price index, where it previously had been calculated as an average of the school funding per pupil of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. So the CPI one would have been a net loss for the district. I know like Rep. Slater, Rep. Wojcicki, a bunch of the Providence delegation fought really hard to get changed back, and that got us an extra $3 million in funding from the state. Actually, I think it might have been more than that. It might have been extra $6. I gotta check that number. They also, another big win for the Providence delegation was they successfully had MLL permanently included in the funding formula, where before it was categorical, which if something's categorical, it might exist one year and not exist the next. So now it's permanently included. That got us a bump of another $3 million over what we anticipated. That's a good thing. It's going to help us as we move forward, particularly as our MLL population continues to grow and evolve. So that was a huge win for us budget-wise.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Scott, can I just interrupt you briefly on that one point with MLL students? And while we have an exceptionally large population of MLL students in Providence, that's also a statewide win. Yes,
Absolutely.
There are other communities that are also seeing drastic increases in there.
Everywhere is seeing increase in MLL students. That's why they try to steal our teachers all the time. So we have teachers now, a large workforce well trained for this. We're up well over 40%. So it's starting to mirror our MLL students in the percentage-wise. And yeah, it's a statewide issue. So the funding, it should help funding across the state, but particularly in Providence right now.
Awesome.
The House and Senate also passed enabling legislation for the Phase 4 school bond construction. So as you know, there's possibly another $400 million, provided that the voters approve it on November 5th. I encourage PPSD parents, teachers, school board members, everyone just to advocate for the passage of this bond resolution. To get it there, it needs a bunch of approvals. It needs approvals from RIDE, it needs approvals from the city council in the form of a resolution. It needs approvals from both the House and the Senate. So the House and Senate passed the enabling legislation, which was the final hurdle to get this $400 million on the ballot, which will be reimbursed at it's reimbursable up to 91 cents on the dollar. It's a huge generational opportunity for the school district, and we're excited about working with the school board to make this possible. On those are the key takeaways in the General Assembly side. On the city side, obviously, the city council and the mayor in totality increased school spending by $5.5 million. So that's a positive step in the right direction. Mr. Vice President, Madam Secretary, I thank you for your advocacy. I know you're out front and vocal about it. as for some of your board colleagues. So that was good. That allowed us to continue to maintain some level of support for our students. It's not falls short of fully funding, but still a great step in the right direction. And the mayor and the city councils are correct, saying that made some cuts to make that happen. So we look forward to being out proactively working on this year's budget with them. Another cool thing that passed, and this was President Rogel worked on this with Councilman Royas, was they passed a resolution encouraging the city to interview Providence graduates for city positions, which I think is really cool and sends the right message. So hats off to the president and to Councilman Royas in that one.
Was it a resolution or ordinance?
It was an ordinance.
Is it an ordinance? Okay, I'll pull it, but it might be an ordinance, but still it gets, I think you're right in that. It's a great thing for the district.
Everything.
And outside that, the city cooperated, they provide some funds to support stipends for CTE students who are doing summer internships, which is great. So that, the city supports to open up some doorways for students that I think will pay dividends down the road. And those are kind of the main takeaways from the city. Now, we should note that they're convening a committee with an acronym. It's a special committee on, my goodness, it's the Hope Committee,
Right.
Health, Opportunity, Prosperity, and Education. That's chaired by Council President Pro Tem Pichardo, and they're going to meet in the fall, and they'll probably have a lens towards, the district, the school board, all the above, just what we're working on, and just try to, ease into whenever the transition back is announced to what the timetable is, ease into that work a little bit. So it's positive. We had good support from city council, and that's really all I had. Those are the major highlights this year, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Is it possible to do, especially when General Assembly session is coming, let me know if this is not feasible, because sometimes it can be a solid hour, but pieces of legislation, a report out piece of legislation that the school board should be aware of. Sometimes it could be impactful for us. Do we want to send a letter of support? Do we want to have folks going to testify in support of the thing? I know previously there used to be some mechanism where it's hey, this is something coming down the pipeline that could impact Providence. Do we want to have a stance on it?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think we have sort of those systems in place now where it can be out ahead with that. Sometimes as we are under state control, I have to run through RIDE, and I think we have pretty good communication on the legislative front now, so I think that'd be a good process to implement going forward. And there are things that behooves us all to support and or sometimes oppose. So we'd be glad to have the school board support something up in the General Assembly.
Yeah.
Mr. Stevens or Ms. Johnson, any questions or comments?
Oh, wait,
on the
actually, I have
please?
one thing.
Sorry.
Is it possible we can do a joint, and I remember trying to get this in motion before summer, but for the fall, a joint school board, city council meeting. There was one I was part of 2018, I think, or 2019. And given that they have it seems like an education committee, I think it'd be helpful to have some sort of.
I think that'd be, if you reached out to President Miller or President Pro Tem Pichardo, they probably have the best line of sight in that.
Yeah, I think it just came down to scheduling. So there's an email I could dig up tomorrow. I think it really was, council president was in favor of it, and I think it really just came down to scheduling folks. And
Yeah.
We held it here last time. Yeah, we definitely held it here. Could be at city council, could be at city hall, wherever, it doesn't matter. But I think having the school board and city council talk about what are we looking to do for the next school year I think it'd be helpful for this current board and whatever iteration of the next board is come January.
Sure, I definitely, if we need to support it, I think it would be a conversation between the board leadership and the council leadership.
Yeah, I think, I don't think I heard any, there was no like opposition in terms of like us doing it. I think it was just more like logistics, like what would be the time? Like,
Gonna be, in the fall, we're gonna be, and I'll share the schedule with the school board, we're gonna be out doing robust engagement on facilities for the upcoming year, so it might make sense to segue it with some of that work, some of that messaging, so we can get everyone on the same page with facilities.
could be in the school building that we do it. And, yeah. I just wanted to throw out this.
That's it. I think I would agree that anytime we can find areas to actually work together and collaborate and get good stuff done, that's an exciting opportunity. So thank you for raising that. Your institutional knowledge is very important, Vice President.
The
As
couple
you-
of years that I have pre-takeover.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Does anyone else have any further comments or questions?
I just have a quick question, James. Would it be possible, this legislative update, is that something that could go at some point into like the, on the website, on the district website? Could there be like a corner for that type of information for like parents to access?
It might, I don't know, you'd have to check on that, if that's something that's advisable to do for a school district, but, call me anytime when you want to talk through legislation, or you want stuff to bring back to PAC, I'd be glad to, put heads together and let you know what I know.
Yeah, so maybe if not on the website, maybe at least we could do that at PAC updates, something like that. Okay, yeah,
We can connect on that, and,
Absolutely.
who we've been faced and see, so it might be good for parents to know about some things coming down at the state and local levels next year.
right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So, if we have no other questions, comments, concerns, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
I second that motion. All in favor? Aye. Excellent. Our meeting is ended. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do it.
All right, I gotta run out. I'll see ya.
I'm on vacation, just reminding you I'm on vacation next week and I don't have to until the break.
Have fun.
I will.
Where you gonna go?
We're going to Hawaii.
Oh my God.
I know.
What do you